Hey everyone, my name is Mauricio, and today we're talking about George C. Marshall, a guy who had two giant careers in one lifetime. He was the top general who ran World War II, but then he turned around and won the Nobel Peace Prize. Marshall basically saved democracy in war and then paid to rebuild it after the fighting stopped. George C. Marshall was born in Pennsylvania in 1880. He wasn't the kind of guy who sought the spotlight. His talent was in being organized. He went to the Virginia Military Institute, or VMI. His key skill was staff planning, meaning he was the best at figuring out how to get supplies and equipment where they needed to be. This organization skill, not fighting, is what would make him famous. Marshall became Army Chief of Staff in September 1939, the exact day the war started. The situation was terrible. As we know from Britannica, the German army was considered the most effective fighting force in the world, using the quick attack method called blitzkrieg. The U.S. Army was completely unprepared. Marshall's first job wasn't to fight. It was to find a way to quickly build a modern army from almost nothing. Marshall is best known as the organizer of victory. This was his biggest job. He was basically the CEO who was responsible for growing the U.S. Army to 8 million soldiers in just a few short years. He coordinated the entire war effort, deciding the strategy, managing all the resources, and personally picking the major commanders like Eisenhower. Marshall's planning genius is the reason the Allies had the stuff they needed to win. Right after the war, Marshall surprised everyone by taking a new role. President Truman asked him to become Secretary of State, America's top diplomat. He simply took his supreme planning skills and started applying them to world problems instead of battles. He understood that stopping the fighting was only the first step toward real peace. In 1947, he introduced his most famous idea, the Marshall Plan. The official name was the European Recovery Program, or ERP. Marshall announced it in a key primary source, a speech at Harvard in June 1947. In that speech, he stated the goal was to fight hunger, poverty, desperation, and chaos, those are Marshall's own words, by quickly getting money and materials into these destroyed countries to bring back economic stability. This plan was a huge deal. $13 billion in aid went to 16 different nations. Marshall's strategy was brilliant because he saw that if people were poor and starving, they might be drawn to communism. By fixing the economies, he created a strong barrier against the spread of Soviet influence and helped these countries stay democratic. For this amazing work for peace, Marshall was given the Nobel Peace Prize in 1953. This is a huge honor. Think about it. He is the only professional soldier in all of history to receive this award. He earned it specifically for the Marshall Plan, proving that he was just as committed to saving lives and restoring democracy through diplomacy as he was to saving them in war. Marshall's huge public legacy, winning the war and rebuilding Europe, is what history remembers most. His closest ally, Winston Churchill, summed it up perfectly when he called Marshall the true organizer of victory. He really was the ultimate planner of his time. Even away from the world stage, Marshall had a huge heart. On a personal note, while he had no biological children, he and his second wife, Catherine, adopted her 3 kids, showing his commitment to building a better future extended even to his family. This completes the full picture of the man. George C. Marshall lived out his final years quietly, passing away in a Washington, D.C. hospital in 1959 at the age of 78. Even in death, Marshall maintained his humble nature. Despite being the highest-ranking general and a Nobel laureate, he specifically requested a simple funeral with no eulogy, refusing the grand public spectacle he was entitled to. He was laid to rest at Arlington National Cemetery next to his first wife and her mother, on the quiet plot he had personally selected years earlier. This final act perfectly captures his lifelong focus on duty and substance over fanfare. Thank you for listening to my presentation. All of the historical information and facts about General Marshall's life, his military career, and the Marshall Plan were gathered from the 4 credible sources listed here. I appreciate your time.